Are you ready for this? The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "If anyone commits a breach of faith or sins unintentionally in any of the holy things of the Lord, he shall bring to the Lord as his compensation a ram without blemish out of the flock. And the priest shall make atonement for him with the ram of the guilt offering, and he shall be forgiven. If anyone sins and commits a breach of faith against the Lord by deceiving his neighbor in a matter of deposit or security, or through robbery, or if he has oppressed his neighbor or has found something lost and lied about it, swearing falsely, in any of the things that people do and sin thereby, if he has sinned and has realized his guilt and will restore what he took by robbery or what he got by oppression or the deposit that was committed to him, and he shall bring to the priest as his compensation to the Lord a ram without blemish out of the flock or its equivalent for a guilt offering. And the priest shall make atonement for him before the Lord, and he shall be forgiven for any of the things that one may do or thereby become guilty." You guys have just received a good reading down from the Leviticus, also called the third book of Moses. And by the tone of how I read these passages to you, you can have a little bit of taste into religious guilting that many of me and my brothers and sisters from many faiths have received. And this is not that video. I am not here to guilt you into anything. I am here to talk about how my thinking about laws, and especially God's laws, evolved over time. Let's just make a recap, okay? So, I am reading the Bible anew this year. And I'm reading the Bible in a way that I read each chapter after the other one, which, if you're any kind of religious community, you know it's not the way that people usually do these kind of things. Because religious texts are so fascinating in their way that you really have to take just one chunk of them and then think about them and learn about them and hear about them and read about them, and then you go to another chunk which may be completely unrelated. But this is what I'm doing because I am a curious person and I've realized that there are some things in the Bible that I don't give as much thought to as I should. By reading the Bible in this way, I managed in the last weeks, I don't know how many weeks because I've also been on vacation. I've read through the second book of Moses, which is called Exodus, and the third book of Moses, which is called Leviticus, and I'm actually starting to read the fourth book of Moses, which is called Numeri. And by doing that, I've been following the line of the narrative. And what I've realized is that there is a point where God, as a deity, intervenes into the life of these 12 tribes of Israel, calling them his people, his special people, and he saves them from an oppression, which is something that I talked in a video before. He saves them, and he also physically removes them from one place, Egypt, through the desert of Sinai, and promises them to bring them in a new place called the land of Canaan. In the narrative, I'm not there yet, but what I'm reading at the moment is at the moment where the tribe stopped in the desert, God just up and gives them a bunch of laws for some reason. And I've never given it much thought before, but the way the narrative follows is that he saves them from under one oppression, and then he says, now you are free and you are going to build your own nations, and I'm going to give you the laws through which you are going to govern that nation, which is a very, very interesting thing to do, and also a little bit feels like coming from one oppression to the other. And that's what really got me thinking, right? So why does he save them and then gives them rules? How does that work? How is that freedom? How is that liberation from any kind of oppression? And when I was talking about this, I heard myself saying this sentence: why do we need laws for the relationship with God if we do not need any laws for the relationships with each other? And then I stopped. And guys, when I heard myself saying that sentence, I realized that that's absolutely not true. That's not true, because we do need laws and we do create laws in the relationships we have with each other. And those laws are called boundaries. And that was something that really blew my mind right up, because I realized that as I was learning about boundaries in my process of becoming a psychologist, and also in my interactions with my patients, I realized how important it is that we create boundaries around what's important for us to protect our sense of self and our identity, and make things not be meshed between you and me in a relationship, that we know clearly where one begins and the other one ends. So that's when I realized that the laws of God are about the boundaries of God, and he created these boundaries in order to be able to be in a relationship with us, with humanity. So this video is going to be about boundaries, about how I understand the law of God as God's boundaries, and why do I think this is important for. First, I want to disclose a few things, and that is, Christians historically have not been so very great at interpreting the Mosaic law, which is the law given by God to Moses. We kind of, after the coming of Jesus and the New Testament, kind of put that, it's no longer relevant. And that's just something that made us not really think much about that. So if you know Christians, you might realize that they have different answers to this question. I will be one more of those answers. That's okay. I have studied theology, but I've never immersed myself into the topic of interpreting each and every letter of what I've just read. Okay, that's one thing. Second thing, I am also a psychologist. So one of the things that I really, really like to do is taking what I know about how human relationships work and seeing if I found any kind of foundation to that in the scriptures that I take as a basis for my spiritual life. Because I believe that should be the same. I don't like to live a life that's not coherent, so it's going to be hard if I believe one in the one side and something else in the different aspect of my life. So I always try to put them together. So this video is going to be me explaining the psychological principle that I really, really, really see present in this aspect of the Bible. And I actually think that makes a lot of sense for me, because I see God as someone who is a relational God, who created relationships, who created humans to be in relationships with each other and with him. And that's why he would model how we should live relationships. I will link in the description one book and one article that I found online that I just reread now preparing for this video, because I thought it really put all the very best information about boundaries together in a way that you just read it, go think about it, and it will help you. These peoples were in oppression. God says, hey people, I hear you, I listen to you, I will save you, see me do it. They saw him do it, and then he said, okay, now you're outside of this oppression. Now you're outside of this uneven relationship. Do you want to be in relationship with me? He actually asked that. And the people say, yes. And then he says, that's great. Look, this is what I need you to know about me. And the first thing that he does is say his name, say what's his main core value, and then he says, this is how I need you to respect this core value, because if not, these are the consequences. And when I realized that, I realized that this is how our relationships also work. What are boundaries? Boundaries, I call them laws that you make towards other people in order to draw a protective layer of safety around your values, your needs, your desires, your thoughts, your feelings, yourself. Basically, drawing a line around what's sacred to you, around what's untouchable to you. And in this article that I've found when I prepared for this video, I really liked what they said, so I'm going to put a few things in my video from them. Thank you very much for writing that article. That was great. They said boundaries are guidelines. They are rules or limits that a person creates for him or herself about what are reasonable, safe, and permissible ways for others to behave around them. And the same boundaries will also give the others information about the ways that this person, he or she, will respond when someone steps outside those limits. These limits can be physical or emotional, or both. Our physical limits are mostly our skin and our own bodies, and we have limits around those. For example, clothes. Clothes are a kind of boundary in the very, very, very basic sense that say you are not privy to my naked body or parts of it. Clothes are also a way of saying I am cold. Sometimes it's just that. And in both cases, it protects a value. It protects my privacy. It protects what I feel. Only me and those that I want to specifically give access to can see me naked. Or in the other example, it just says, my value is to feel in a comfortable temperature. So if it's cold outside, I'm going to put more clothes on. What I most like about boundaries is that what they really do is help you define a sense of self, a sense of separation, a healthy separation, something that says, look, this is me, these are my needs, these are my desires, these are my thoughts, these are my feelings, they are not yours. And that's what make people be able to be in a relationship with each other. Because if we are able to separate between these are my feelings, those are your feelings, then we can both negotiate from our own points of view how do we go and have a relationship with each other. That's why also for setting a boundary, we are responsible for setting our own boundaries, and not someone else is responsible for setting boundaries for us about us. We all are responsible for our own boundaries. Not your neighbor, not your friend, not your spouse, not anybody else is responsible to know what hurts you, what is too much for you, or what is something that you don't want to be shared. And this is what it means to create safety with boundaries. I also, in this article that I read, I found a very, very, I think, easy example to understand. If I am at my workplace and someone who has the same sex as I do compliments me on my clothing or on my appearance, then I might interpret that as a boost of self-esteem, and I will feel great, and I still be feeling very, very safe in that situation. But if someone from the opposite sex does the exact same thing, I might be wondering if there's something else going on, and I will feel unsafe. So boundaries are there to say, look, this is something that I don't want you to say when you are around me. Please don't do it. So obviously, I think that in order for a relationship to work, you need the individuals to be very aware of who they are and who they are not, and to set clear boundaries, each according to the type of relationship that they are in. And I actually do believe that there's no such thing as a healthy relationship without healthy boundaries. Because the healthy boundaries create a sense of separateness in the togetherness that we have. But without boundaries, we don't really feel like two different individuals. Ever since I've learned about this topic, and I've been realizing where am I unable or able to set boundaries in my life, I realized that to set boundaries is extremely important for two reasons. One, if you want to be in a relationship with someone, and if you want to be yourself in that relationship, not somebody else. And that really just opened up my eyes to realize why also setting boundaries was so important for God and a thing to do for Him. Because by setting boundaries, He actually says, look, you guys, I really do want to be in a relationship with you. But there's something about you that I cannot tolerate next to me because of something about me. And this something about me is a core value. I told you guys when he was about to give his boundaries or his laws to Moses, God actually said his name. And he said, I am holy, and this holiness is dangerous. This holiness is going to kill you, is going to kill the people if they are not very, very, very careful about how they approach me. But I want to be in a relationship with them. I want to be there. I want to be their savior. I want to be their God. I want to bless their land. I want to bless their life. I want to show them how to live the best life they can. So this is how I find a way to have both. To have you be you and me be me and still be in a relationship. And my God, these texts are thousands of years old, and I still feel maybe if more of us would be aware that we can set boundaries and we can respect each other's boundaries, we would be more able to be in relationship with each other without having to always separate and hate on each other so much. Because there is something bigger. And I love how boundaries, and I love how in this way also God's laws bring a bigger picture into the picture. The one thing is individuality. The one thing is every part of the relationship be who he or she is. And the other part is being together. And I hate to see in how many times one is sacrificed for the other. Either people sacrifice who they are because they think that's the only way to save a relationship, or people sacrifice relationships because they think that's the only way for them to remain who they are. And what I see in the Bible, in this ancient text that talks about women being unclean when they are menstruating. By the way, I have no idea how to interpret this for our thing. I don't know. So that's why I'm not going into that. From this ancient text, I understand that there is an importance about being who we are and being in a relationship and not giving up on either of them, because being in that system which allows for both of them somehow is worth it. It was worth it. It is worth it for the creator of the universe. So I think we should give it a try. And here's the thing: the text does not really specify what exactly about humans is that God cannot be in the same room with or else. Some people interpret that, and I am thinking, this is my speculation, it could be that we are mortals, and the mere stink of death in our beings somehow is offensive to the God who is life. There are several aspects in the Bible generally, especially the huge prohibition about blood, which is supposed to be the carrier of life or the soul, which is also in this laws that says do not eat that, but use it to cleanse. So I think maybe it's something about that. I think some theologians interpreted it as the sin that we carry, which again, it's a huge topic. I don't want to talk about sin just like that, because I think that's, again, it's a word that has been used so much and had so many different layers of meaning attached to it, that I rather just wait for a text that comes and shows exactly, or more exactly, what it is. Maybe I will talk about it in a video, maybe not. But what I do see is that the sheer fact that if God was willing to create boundaries or laws in order to stay in a relationship with us, tells me that his problem is not us. It's not humanity. It's not me or you. It's something that we carry, like a disease or something like an infection. And that means that whatever you have heard before, it's not that God hates you and he wants you to be something else that you cannot possibly be in order to be acceptable for him to be in a relationship with you. No, it's something that you carry, and you carry it very deep within you, and somehow it comes up in these very different ways. And it's like when you shouldn't go to someone who is vulnerable, um, um, who is bodily vulnerable when you are infected with some kind of a disease. I actually have a great example for this. As I speak, I felt the whole day that I was getting sick. And in a couple of days' time, I have a baby shower coming up for a friend that I care about very deeply. And it's not a huge sickness. My husband had it. It seems like the common cold. But still, I wrote to this friend. I said, "Hey, friend, I would really like to be there on your shower, but I want you to know that I feel like I'm coming down with a cold. I really want you to be the one who decides if you want me there or if you would rather protect your unborn child's health." And to be really, really honest, every kind of answer that she would have given me, I would have been fine with it, because I see the value that she protects, and I would protect that same value in her situation. And I might have said, just stay home. But she said, if you feel well enough, I would really like you there because I want to celebrate with you. So maybe let's not hug too much, or if you have to sneeze, please don't sneeze next to me. And you guys, this is how we put the two things together. This is how I get to be there celebrating her shower. And I still get to be sick, which is something that I have no control over. And she gets to be there, and she gets to enjoy my company. Let's hope she enjoys it. It's worth it. Without having to worry too much about the health of her bump. So this is what it means to me, and this is where spiritually this understanding of the law is bringing me something of great value. Because by this understanding, I realize that when you have two individuals who are completely different from each other, they have both the right to be in that relationship with their full selves. And that's why they fashion these kinds of laws. And when I see that even though there are many things that I don't understand, like many things, especially in the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament as Christians call it, but I see that there's a God who really wants to be in a relationship and who really does everything possible for that. And he clearly states what is going to happen. And that is very freeing, and that is very real. I like to have my spirituality be something that I can use in my life. I like my faith life, my work life, my home life, my soul life, my personal, just me life, be something that in and of itself is coherent. So this is how the Bible very much, or at least this part, very much resonates with my experience. And let me tell you, I used to be a kind of person who didn't care about boundaries. I used to be in relationships where there was no end of me and starting of you. And those went so wrong, and they hurt me on so many levels, and I'm sure they hurt the other persons too. And it's not working. This inspires me to become better at relationships, to realize that the person who is in front of me is his or her own person with his or her own values. We don't have to share the same values in order to be in a relationship. We don't have to become the image of each other in order to be in a relationship with each other. So I worship a God that I know is fully different than me. And that's how I know that I'm not just worshiping myself in an exteriorized or projected form. This is what gives me also peace of mind. This is what gives me a basis. And I really do appreciate this. I especially appreciate it in the hardest moments of my life, when I have to learn and relearn hard things again and again. All right, guys, thank you so much for putting up the patience to listening to all that I had to say about boundaries and the Mosaic law and my experiences a little bit. Let me know if you like this kind of topics, if you like this kind of content. If you like it, just subscribe to my channel. I really want to make more videos of this type, not just about the Bible, but about spirituality in general. If you have questions about either the Bible or theology or Christianity or psychology, mental health and stuff like that, or about how I put them all together, please write to me, answer in the comments or on Instagram. Please subscribe to my channel, like this video if you really like it, and share it with your friends. Come back for new videos next week, and let me know what would you need to see here. Take very good care of yourselves. Bye!